Hello, my name is Raymond Garchowski, and I am a living Christ. The message I have for you today is a living Christ gives the spiritual solution to heaven or hell. You see, life on earth has always been a spiritual testing ground for the soul of man, and it continues to be so on to this very day. I, this living Christ of 78 years of age, look back at my experiences in this lifetime, along with the ageless insights which one has gained through the opening of one's consciousness beyond the intellect. And I realize that fact more and more each day. For those of you who are able to grasp the meaning of my messages, consider yourselves blessed, for you have experienced many lifetimes in this eternal struggle that has brought you to your present state of understanding. This is no accident, for life itself is the process of what is, unfolding according to one's projected actions invested in their material relationships. For those of you who don't grasp the subtle energies which lie beyond the material intellect, or actively resist the simple truth of my messages, you can see that your lives continue to deteriorate with each passing day. Your problem is and always has been your addiction to conditionable belief without testing those beliefs to determine the quality of truth that you have invested in them. This accounts for practically every one of you who finds your life to manifest as hell, as experience via your satanically ruled, divisive, and opposing intellect. You have chosen your God, for it is Satan, the petty god which rules over your intellect. This civilized world that you live in is the hell on earth that you experience daily. And there are legions of you whom you all depend upon for mutual support, to go along, to get along, while retaining the ability to blame each other for your own pain and suffering. That's how your world works, doesn't it? Pain, suffering, anger, violence, mutual predation, deception, and most of all, massive confusion, which operates at optimum capacity to ensure that you can justify your own satanic motives with plausible denial. The structure of government, religions, and thought-based corporations are the creators of the satanic templates that have been laid out for you to worship and to guide you throughout your lives. They assure you of continuous enslavement until you pass away. You die, only to return to the matrix of eternal truths that is life, which continues to provide experience to test your spiritual mettle. Many of you don't have a clue of what I am speaking of, for you have not yet gained the ability to grasp such energy, which does not fit the pattern of your present limited, divisive, and opposing satanic conditioning. Thus, you shall rail against it. You shall attack it. You shall demean it. Fortify your own violent stupidity and bring about your own self-destruction, only to come back and do it all over again. Are you Satanists or are you Christs? That's easily determined, is it not? Do you follow another blindly because you lack the responsibility for your own actions? Is your common energy that of calmness, tranquility, and harmony? Or is it the violence of dualistic contest, competition, and opposition? It really is a no-brainer, is it not? My writing for the last 20 years on the internet is available to all of you on my websites, arkenterprises.com and lisarayenterprises.com, along with the many search engines that one may find on the internet under the name of Raymond Karchevsky. It speaks to the energy of a living Christ in his relationship with legions of Satanists who have been enslaved through doubt and opposition. There you shall find the answer to your current confusion, which is leading you to self-destruct through war, through revolution, through martial law, and through mutual self-hatred. This is not speculative. You can count on it. You see, your intellectual ignorance knows no bounds, and your pridefulness of your own personal state of ignorance is ratcheted up by stupidity, as there can be no end to hell as long as duality clouds your consciousness. You all have the same opportunity as this living Christ to have peace and tranquility in your lives, but its acquisition depends strictly upon your actions, not your illusory beliefs. I, this living Christ, have shared the only genuine, redemptive action that may be taken against the satanic powers of government and religion. And these actions are not dualistic and opposing in nature. That is quite clear for each of you who live in your dualistic intellects are disturbed by that fact. You see, a Christ operates beyond the realm of intellect and disarms the reactive nature of satanic punishment experienced by opposing intellects. His freedom, his sovereignty, relies upon the adage, resist not evil, boycott, boycott, boycott it. You see, that doesn't feed your present satanic bloodlust, does it? You have to be incited by the incessant insanity fed you daily by your leaders and the media, which are amplified by satanic, emotionally unhinged, motivating talk show hosts who scream and rant and rave, amplified by satanic intellects, as he plants the seeds of violence into your consciousness, your limited, controlled, mind-controlled consciousness. And in doing so, he assures your own headlong, voluntary thrust into self-destruction. You see them as your champions, but in fact, they are your Judas goats. My purpose, my mission on earth has been served. I have brought you the message of peace, of love, and you have seen how it has been received by the likes of most of you. If you weren't actively attacking the messenger, you purposely remained hidden behind a stone wall of silence, fearing the lightning rod attack reactions experienced by this living Christ, fearing that they would find their way to you should you become open, visible, channel entities of truth, love, and harmony in your present societal life, a life of violence, of deception and tyranny, and you come face to face with your own level of spiritual courage, or lack thereof. Let me tell you this. There is no free ride. You all have the power over satanic Satanists who consider you to be human resources, stupid animals who fight wars, kill each other, without knowing why they do so, and useless eaters when you have lost your energy of life through conflict and have been diminished and no longer have the capacity to waste your life away. You have allowed yourselves, through your own consent, to accept the cloak of slavery. That power, the power of boycott, is not resistance. but that of sovereign action, taken responsibility by sovereign men and women who no longer see themselves as slaves. There is no violence in the withdrawal of your support of hell on earth. There's only the peaceful deconstruction of hell via your own regained clarity of life's energy. I, this living Christ, have given you the key to the restoration of the second coming of Christ consciousness to each of you. For what I have demonstrated in my own life's experiences with the satanic courts of Oregon and its law enforcements can be done by each of you. That is a spiritual fact. The Bundys and the other Nevada-based and Oregon protesters presently arrested by the satanic federal government would be damned fools if they did not heed the lessons taught by this living, breathing, flesh and blood, sentient, natural man of the sovereign people, this living Christ. You see, by their consent to engage themselves in fictional trials by fictional courts and fictional lawyers, by trying to outlawyer the lawyers who make up these fictional rules that have no binding upon sovereign men and women. You see, that is the message, the spiritual message that all must come to sooner or later in their lives. They must overcome the spiritual ignorance that has been cast upon them by their own consent, the satanic intellectual consciousness. By shucking the chains of slavery that bind you, you return to your rightful state of sovereign men and women. The rest of your lives shall be marked by the clear sign of a lack of ignorance and a lack of harm in your relationships with one another. You see. But the Bundys and the other protesters must realize, must transcend their present state of understanding, is to understand that they have committed no crimes, you see. And thus, if no crime is committed, the courts of man, the courts of satanic mind control have no jurisdiction over their lives. You see, these courts are guided by the fictional rules that are made by other fictional lawyers. And if no harm is done, no crime is committed, and therefore no jurisdiction exists over living men. that exist only over the dead personages of juristic entities that are created by the fictional government itself. Living man makes the mistake, through self-doubt, of granting jurisdiction to these courts, and thus signs his life away, steps into hell, and for most of you, you never see daylight again. To awaken, to open your eyes, and step out by challenging the courts to prove jurisdiction over you, the living man or woman. You see, they will not do that. They convicted the juristic person whose name was similar to mine through birth certification. But I, this living Christ, this living man, challenge the courts of Oregon to prove their fictional jurisdiction over this living man in writing, as their own law requires of them, and they refuse to do it. Not only then, but here and now, 13 years later, they refuse to answer the questions of jurisdiction. That is their own indictment of the falsity of their power. They have no power. Put it to the test. Ask them to prove jurisdiction over living men, and see if you'll get an answer from them. You see, if they do answer, their whole house of cards comes tumbling down. The fraud that they have perpetrated upon living men for millennia will be over. The problem which besets civilized mankind is that you don't have an inkling of a clue of the satanic or the spiritual forces that I speak of, that civilized conditioned entities who make up the mass of the living dead are faced with. And through such ignorance, they pridefully sacrifice their own lives to serve such ignorance. Hell, isn't it?